Hey, my name is Dan. I used to work at the biggest car dealership in the country, and now I teach fine folks like you how not to get fucked when buying a car. Now in this video, I want to talk to you about negative equity and why you could be upside down on your loan. So let's start with why there is such a thing as negative equity and what is being upside down on your car loan. So when you buy a car, you go to a dealership and you buy a car for whatever the price the dealership is telling you to buy. Or maybe you'll even negotiate $1,000 or $1,500 off the price of a car. 3, 4, 5, 6 years later, you're still paying on your car and you want to upgrade to a new car, you want to trade your car in, and the dealership is only willing to give you, for example, $5,000 when you owe $7,000 on your car, or $8,000 or $9,000 or $10,000 in some cases. So you have $5,000 worth of negative equity. That means your car is worth this much, but you owe on your car to the bank this much. So that's the problem. And this is why this happened, because you got a car in the first place with a really bad price. That's it. Negative equity comes from people buying shit cars, with buying cars for a really bad price, for overpaying cars. That's where negative equity comes. If a person were to buy a car in the first place for the right price, then 6, 7 years later, he'll be able to sell it for the right price. But if he were to buy it for $7,000 over what the market value price is, 7 years later, or 5 years later, or 6 years later, or 4 years later, whatever years later, the person decides to trade in their car is still more expensive because they paid more for it in the first place. So negative equity comes from overpaying for the car in the first place. How do you avoid that? You buy the car for the right price in the first place. You have to do a lot of research. What I teach, I spend 300 hours worth of research to put my course together. You can have the same information, spend 200-300 hours, collect a lot of information, make a lot of phone calls, talk to a lot of managers, talk to a lot of people, talk to a lot of salespeople, watch a lot of videos, read a lot of information on Google, and you're gonna have the same information. I spent 300 hours because that's my business, and I just happen to like it. When somebody buys the course, they know exactly the same information that I know. I teach them everything I could possibly think for them to get the best possible deal. Now let's talk about how to get out of negative equity. You have a couple of different options. Option number 1, drive the car that you own and just drive it until you hit 150,000 miles. I mean, you gotta drive every single penny out of it. Drive it for a very long time. That's number 1. Number 2, sell the car and then buy yourself a cheap car, like a $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 car, and you drive that car for 4 or 5 years. Option number 3, you sell your car, lose some money on it, buy yourself another car which you can flip. You buy such a good car, you buy such a good deal that you can actually sell it for more than you bought it for. You gotta have a little hustle in you, you gotta have a little know-how, you gotta have a little salesmanship skills, you gotta know how to use Craigslist, how to properly write a good ad, you know how to take good photos. It's not hard. I do teach all of that in my course, but it's something you gotta do. Or option number 4, you can just take the loss. So there are options. It's not such a bad place to be in negative equity. It sucks, I understand, but it's not the end of the world. You have options. The best option would be drive the car that you already own, or if it's a gas guzzler, if it's a truck and you need to downgrade because it's just taking so much money to fuel that thing, buy a smaller car like a Honda Civic or some kind of Hyundai or Kia or Toyota Corolla is a really good option. Something that gets, 30-35 miles to a gallon, and you're going to be able to drive that thing for many years. It's going to be a reliable car, and it's going to get you out of this hole that salesman put you in. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up below and click the subscribe button over my head, or watch one of those 2 videos if you want to see more money saving tips about cars. This is Dan with 60 Minute Car. I'm signing out, and I'll see you on the internet.